Have you ever been in a meeting or maybe just scrolling through the news and felt like everyone started speaking a totally different language? You know, LLM, deep learning, generative AI. It feels like a lot to keep up with. Well, guess what? In the next few minutes, we're going to crack the code on all of it. Let's dive in.
And hey, if you're feeling a little overwhelmed, you are definitely not alone. The speed of AI right now is just incredible. And all the jargon can feel like a huge barrier. But trust me, once you get a handle on these key ideas, you're not just going to keep up, you're going to be way ahead of the game.
So, here's our game plan. We've got a really simple roadmap. We'll start with the big picture, then we'll look at how AI actually learns. After that, we'll peek inside the models that are powering everything, see the products you use every single day, touch on some super important safety stuff, and then wrap it all up with your own personal learning plan.
Okay, first up, let's get the lay of the land. Think of these as the foundational, need-to-know terms that you're going to hear everywhere. They put everything else we're about to discuss into context.
Let's start with the big one, artificial intelligence, or just AI. The easiest way to think about AI is the huge overall dream. It's the whole field of science that's trying to make machines smart. You know, when your phone uses Face ID to unlock, that's AI in action. And why it matters is simple. This is the giant umbrella that covers everything else we're going to talk about today. So, how do we actually make machines smart? Well, the most popular way by far is through machine learning, or ML. Instead of writing a million lines of code with specific rules, we just feed a computer a ton of data and let it figure out the patterns on its own. Your Netflix queue recommending what you should watch next? That is a perfect example of ML. This is a big deal because it's the main engine that makes most of the AI you use possible.
Okay, now let's go one level deeper with deep learning. It's actually called deep because it uses these really complex, multi-layered structures, we'll get to those in a sec, to learn from absolutely massive amounts of data. When you ask Siri or Alexa a question and it just gets it, that's deep learning. And it's so important because this is the powerhouse behind all the most exciting stuff happening right now, from understanding language to creating images.
And what's under the hood of deep learning? Neural networks. These are really cool computer systems that are basically modeled after how our own brains work. They have all these interconnected points, or nodes, that work together to process information. For all intents and purposes, the neural network is the engine that makes deep learning go. And this little diagram just illustrates it perfectly. You've got the huge idea of artificial intelligence. Inside of that, you have machine learning as the main method. And then, as a really powerful type of machine learning, you have deep learning, which is built using those neural networks. It's kind of like a set of Russian nesting dolls, right? Each one fits right inside the other.
Okay, so we know the main categories. But now for the fun part. How do they actually learn anything? I mean, how does a computer model go from knowing absolutely nothing to making these incredibly smart predictions?
It's actually a pretty straightforward three-step dance. Step one, you need a data set. That's just a huge pile of examples, like say, 1 million pictures of cats. Step two is training. This is where the model looks at those cat pictures over and over and over, tweaking its own internal wiring until it gets really good at spotting what makes a cat a cat. And finally, step three is inference. That's the magic moment when you show it a brand new picture it's never seen before and it correctly predicts, yep, that's a cat.
What's really cool is that there are different teaching styles for AI. With supervised learning, you're giving it labeled data, kind of like flashcards with the answers on the back. For unsupervised learning, you just dump a bunch of unlabeled data on it and it has to find the patterns itself, like sorting a giant pile of mixed-up Lego bricks by color. And then there's reinforcement learning, where the AI learns by trial and error, getting little rewards for good moves, kind of like how you train a dog to play fetch.
All right, let's zoom in on the technology that, let's be honest, everyone is talking about right now, the brains behind tools like ChatGPT.
I guarantee you've heard this one, large language model, or LLM. This is a massive deep learning model that has read basically a huge chunk of the internet. Its one and only job is to predict the next most likely word in a sentence. And because it's so good at that one job, it can understand and write text that feels incredibly human. LLMs are a huge deal because they are the engine driving this whole conversational AI revolution.
So how does an LLM actually read? It doesn't see words and sentences like we do. It breaks everything down into what are called tokens. A token is usually a word, or sometimes just a piece of a word. You can think of them as the Lego bricks of language. The LLM just sees a long string of tokens, and its job is to guess which Lego brick comes next.
And that brings us to how we get in on the action. A prompt is simply your instruction to the AI. It's your question, your command, it's the conversation starter. And this is so important because learning how to write a good, clear prompt is probably the single most valuable skill for getting amazing results out of these tools.
And this slide just shows the difference perfectly. If you give it a vague prompt like write about dogs, you're going to get a vague, probably boring answer. But if you give it a specific prompt that includes the topic, the tone, the length, the format, you're going to get something you can actually use. The better your instructions, the better the result. It's that simple.
Okay, let's connect all this back to the real world. How does all this tech actually show up in the apps and products we use every day?
Well, one of the most common ways you'll see AI is in a chatbot. This is just an AI that's been designed specifically to have a conversation. You've seen them a million times, popping up on a shopping website to ask if you need help, or the more advanced ones we can now have full-blown conversations with.
And this is where things get really, really cool. Generative AI. This is a whole category of AI that doesn't just analyze information, it creates brand new original things. It can draft an email for you, it can compose music, or it can generate a mind-blowing image just from a few words you type. And this matters because it completely changes the game, turning AI from just a tool into a creative partner.
Now, with all of this amazing power, of course, comes great responsibility. So let's talk about a couple of really critical safety terms that you absolutely need to know to be a smart, responsible AI user. It's a really fair question, and honestly, it's one we should all be asking. When we're using these incredibly powerful new tools, what are the pitfalls? What are the gotchas we need to be on the lookout for? Well, there are two really big ones.
The first one is bias. Here's the thing. Since AI learns from data that was made by humans, it can unfortunately learn our biases too. So if a model is trained on data from the past where certain groups of people were treated unfairly, well, the AI's answers might actually reflect and even amplify those same unfair patterns. That's why it's so critical that we're always questioning these systems to make sure they're built to be fair for everyone.
And this second one is hallucination. This is a really, really important one to remember. It's when an AI just confidently makes something up. Because it's just predicting the next most likely word, it can sometimes create facts or, quote, sources that sound totally real but are completely fake. And that is why you must always fact-check any important information you get from an AI.
Wow, we have covered a ton of ground. So let's do a super quick recap of the most important stuff, and then I'll give you a really simple next step for your learning journey.
Here it is, your cheat sheet. If you only remember 6 things, make it these. AI is the big dream. Machine learning is how it actually works. LLMs are the brains behind the chatbots. Generative AI is the creative magic. A prompt is how you take control. And always, always be skeptical. Watch out for bias and hallucinations. If you've got these 6 down, you are in fantastic shape.
So, what's next? I've got a little challenge for you. This week, pick 5 terms from this list and just try to spot them out in the wild. See if you can find generative AI in a news headline, or notice when an app you use is probably using machine learning. Honestly, the best way to make this stuff stick is to see it in action. Your journey to understanding AI has officially begun.